With the 33rd pick in the 2020 draft, the Cincinnati Bengals select T. Higgins, wide receiver, Clemson.
Somewhere Zach Taylor was listening to Michael Irvin. Give this man more weapons. Here's what you need to know about T. Higgins in his 3-year career at Clemson. 27 touchdown catches. Why is that significant? It ties the school record of DeAndre Hopkins and Sammy Watkins, who were both first-round picks.
With the 34th pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Indianapolis Colts select Michael Pittman, wide receiver, USC.
Well, just like the first round, we're going to see a lot of wideouts go off the board. And here's what you need to know about Michael Pittman. The name sounds familiar, and Booger alluded to it. His dad was a punishing runner for the Tampa Bay Bucs, among other teams, and he was part of a Super Bowl championship squad.
With the 35th pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select DeAndre Swift, running back, Georgia.
Okay, this is an interesting pick here because DeAndre Swift is a guy who can do a lot of things out of the backfield. He waited his time at Georgia behind a lot of good runners like Nick Chubb and Sony Michel.
With the 36th pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the New York Giants select Xavier McKinney, defensive back, Alabama.
All right, so the X-Man is off the board, which means it's time for another tattoo for Xavier McKinney. He has been doing that since he was 6 years old. He's got Marvin the Martian, the Minions. He's got a bunch of things on there. Now he's going to have a New York Giants logo as well.
With the 37th pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the New England Patriots select Kyle Duggar, defensive back, Lenore Ryan.
Lenore Ryan, stand up. Kyle Duggar is off the board. It's the first time an NFL team has selected a Division II safety in the first 3 rounds since the Bears took Daniel Manning out of Abilene Christian, 42nd overall in 2006.
With the 38th pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Carolina Panthers select Yetur Gross-Matos, defensive end, Penn State.
All right, Yetur Gross-Matos led the team at Penn State with 9.5 sacks and 15 tackles for loss. He was a first-team All-Big Ten selection by the coaches and the media. But the things that he has had to deal with through a very, very young start in his life is absolutely incredible.
With the 39th pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins select Robert Hunt, tackle, Louisiana Lafayette.
Well, there he is. Robert Hunt is now off the board, and Robert Hunt is a fascinating prospect here because Robert Hunt in the last 2 seasons allowed a total of 5 quarterback pressures and 574 pass blocks. He did not have a single blown block on any of his 216 rushes in the last 2 seasons.
With the 40th pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Houston Texans select Ross Blacklock, defensive tackle, TCU.
All right, Ross Blacklock is a very interesting story as he's awaiting to hear the news officially that he is off the board. Played at TCU. The advisory board told him to go back to school for 1 more year, but he says, I'm going to trust my instincts, out of Missouri City, Texas.
The Cleveland Browns have traded the 41st pick to the Indianapolis Colts. With the 41st pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Indianapolis Colts select Jonathan Taylor, running back, Wisconsin.
Jonathan Taylor is a fascinating player. Came out of New Jersey where he broke another former Badger running back's high school rushing record. He almost went to Harvard as a philosophy major.
With the 42nd pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Laviska Shenault, wide receiver, Colorado.
Duvall, stand up, because Laviska Shenault is a big play waiting to happen. How do I know that? The first time he ever touched the ball in a game at Colorado as a freshman, he picked up a fumbled punt and took it 55 yards to the house against Texas State.
Now, with the 43rd pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Chicago Bears select Cole Kmet, tight end, Notre Dame.
Well, the tight ends are going to be coming off the board, and no surprise that Cole Kmet is one of the first one. He put on a show at the Combine, ran a 4.740, tying for second with a 10-foot 3-inch broad jump. He said, I want to do the things necessary to show I'm the top tight end at the draft. And he's the latest in a long line of Notre Dame tight ends.
With the 44th pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Cleveland Browns select Grant Delpit, defensive back, LSU.
All right, so Grant Delpit is off the board, and he's finally there. He is going to go to the Cleveland Browns. By the way, this is the second straight year that the Cleveland Browns have taken an LSU defensive back in the second round. They also got corner Greedy Williams.
With the 45th pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Antoine Winfield, defensive back, Minnesota.
Okay, this is kind of strange. We've had 4 safeties go off here in the second round, and they both went in back-to-back picks. The Giants took Xavier McKinney, and then the Patriots took Kyle Duggar. We just had Cleveland take Grant Delpit, and now Antoine Winfield Jr. is off the board. I could be wrong, but I think they're a little happy about this in the Woodlands, Texas, which is where he's from. Again, Antoine Winfield, a unanimous All-American.
With the 46th pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Denver Broncos select KJ Hamler, wide receiver, Penn State.
Okay, they are clearly surrounding their quarterback, Drew Lock, who they took in the second round last year out of Missouri, with some weapons. They got Jerry Jeudy in the first round, and now, Lewis, they get KJ Hamler, who all he did his freshman year break Saquon Barkley's all-purpose yardage mark.
With the 47th pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Atlanta Falcons select Marlon Davidson, defensive tackle, Auburn.
Well, Marlon Davidson teamed up with Derek Brown to put together an absolutely impressive defensive line for the Auburn Tigers, and Gus Malzahn and Kevin Steele, their defensive coordinator. He had an opportunity to jump and enter the draft last year following his third year as a starter.
The New York Jets have traded the 48th pick to the Seattle Seahawks. With the 48th pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Seattle Seahawks select Darrell Taylor, defensive end, Tennessee.
All right, he played outside linebacker at Tennessee, had 8.5 sacks as a redshirt senior, and DJ, one of the only 3 Vols ever to have a 4-sack game.
Yeah, somebody that was hurt this year, but you go back to 2018, you see the get-off right here, the explosiveness that he has.
The 49th pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Pittsburgh Steelers select Chase Claypool, wide receiver, Notre Dame.
All right, Chase Claypool went from Abbotsford, British Columbia to South Bend, and now he's going to the confluence of the 3 rivers, the Ohio, the Allegheny, and the Monongahela. Chase Claypool had a really, really strong combine, but he grew up in Abbotsford, British Columbia.
With the 50th pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Chicago Bears select Jaylen Johnson, defensive back, Utah.
So Jaylen Johnson is now off the board, and was a very interesting story. Found out after the season he played the entire year at Utah with a torn labrum. He had a tackling drill that went awry in camp early on, but he stayed and decided to play through the entire season.
With the 51st pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Dallas Cowboys select Trayvon Diggs, defensive back, Alabama.
All right, so the Cowboys thought they might go defensive back in the first round. Instead, CeeDee Lamb fell to him, and now Trayvon Diggs, the younger brother of Stephon Diggs, is going to be a member of the Dallas Cowboys. By the way, the first ever NFL game Trayvon Diggs went to, it was the Minneapolis Miracle game.
With the 52nd pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Los Angeles Rams select Cam Akers, running back, Florida State.
Well, this is interesting because, remember, they just moved on from Todd Gurley, and they're getting someone who's on a very short list of things that have been accomplished at Florida State as a running back. He's just the 3rd Seminole to have multiple 1,000-yard rushing season.
With the 53rd pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Philadelphia Eagles select Jalen Hurts, quarterback, Oklahoma.
Well, it just got interesting, ladies and gentlemen, as Jalen Hurts is going to Doug Peterson and that Philadelphia offense, and there are a million ways this can go. Jalen Hurts has barely been two completely different quarterbacks.
With the 54th pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Buffalo Bills select A.J. Epinesa, defensive end, Iowa.
So A.J. Epinesa goes to what is already going to be a very, very good defense. And this was a kid who was one of the first five-star recruits to go to Iowa for a while and sat for a while.
With the 55th pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Baltimore Ravens select J.K. Dobbins, running back, Ohio State.
Well, we'll wait a few seconds to see if this gets the official Mel Kiper Jr. seal of approval, but it should. J.K. Dobbins is the first Buckeye back in school history to rush for 1,000 or more yards as a freshman, sophomore, and junior. Also became the first running back ever in school history to rush for 2,000 yards.
With the 56th pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins select Raekwon Davis, defensive tackle, Alabama.
All right, Raekwon Davis was a very, very productive player, Booger, at Alabama. What are the Miami Dolphins getting in someone that has been through the Nick Saban system?
With the 57th pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Los Angeles Rams select Van Jefferson, wide receiver, Florida.
Well, it certainly seems like we have a ton of draftees this year with NFL lineage. He's from Brentwood, Tennessee, started his career at Ole Miss, then transferred to Florida. But by the way, father, Sean, wide receiver for 13 years in the NFL.
With the 58th pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Minnesota Vikings select Ezra Cleveland, tackle, Boise State.
Well, pretty much the opposite of the wide receiver. It is an offensive lineman, and it is Ezra Cleveland. And I'm going to tell you something that's significant as he just got the news. The former Boise State left tackle started the last 3 seasons for the Broncos.
With the New York Jets pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Jets select Denzel Mims, wide receiver, Baylor.
The Baylor Bear is finally off the board. Denzel Mims is going to be the new target for Sam Darnold to throw to. Remember, they lost Robbie Anderson, their big play wide receiver, in free agency. Again, this is a guy who is fast. That 4.3, 840 was third most among wide receivers.
The Baltimore Ravens have traded the 60th pick to the New England Patriots. With the 60th pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the New England Patriots select Josh Uche, linebacker, Michigan.
So Josh Uche, linebacker from Michigan, is now off the board. And if you think about it, this is a very, very Patriot kind of pick, as everybody is happy.
With the 61st pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Tennessee Titans select Christian Fulton, defensive back, LSU.
So Christian Fulton, another member of that LSU secondary that has been so draftable over the years, is now off the board. Now, he had his issues at LSU. He was slapped with a 2-year ban at one point.
With the 62nd pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers select A.J. Dillon, running back, Boston College.
Well, I think Aaron Rodgers will be okay with this pick, ladies and gentlemen, because he gets himself a skill position player. And A.J. Dillon skillfully rewrote the record book for running backs at Boston College. He left the program there with career rushing records for yards, rushing yards, all-purpose yards, rushing touchdowns, and total touchdowns.
The 63rd pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Kansas City Chiefs select Willie Gay, linebacker, Mississippi State. Here goes Chiefs.
All right, so it is a linebacker, Willie Gay, but has some off-field issues. He was suspended 8 games by the NCAA for academic violations. 9 other Mississippi State players were also suspended, part of that. And then he injured Mississippi State quarterback Garrett Schrader in practice in a fight before the Music City Bowl. That, according to multiple media reports.
The Seattle Seahawks have traded the 64th pick to the Carolina Panthers. With the 64th pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Carolina Panthers select Jeremy Chin, defensive back, Southern Illinois.
Saluki, stand up. Carbondale, Illinois is on the board as Jeremy Chin is the highest Southern Illinois football player drafted since Terry Taylor went in the 3rd round of the Seahawks in 1984. Mel, this was one of your gems in this draft.